Karen Docherty, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to hear your story. You are a renowned psychic medium, but you also had kind of near-death experience as well. So I'd like to talk about both. Before we get into that, could you just share a little bit with our viewers what got you started? Were you always a medium, or did something happen in your life?
No, I really was aware of spirit from, when I was a young child. Not that I knew that it was spirit or what it was. I didn't know it was mediumship or anything like that when I was so young. But I do recall seeing other people and knowing that they were from the other place, as I called it, and knowing that they weren't of this world, but they were alive and they were real. And as I grew up, I would tell my grandmother, oh, there's a lady in the other room, or, and point things out, or I felt someone beside me. And she would just say, well, the dead won't harm you. And she was very like calm about it. It didn't really ruffle any feathers. And I think that that just kind of made me accept it a little bit easier. But when I was older, coming into my teenage years, I started to realize that maybe not everyone felt these things and not everyone would see these things. And so it kind of stood out to me that there was something else going on. And it was probably another 10 years at least before I actually started to develop that and see exactly what it was.
Well, I think it's a big shift going from people not even knowing that such a thing exists to actually creating a business out of it.
Yeah,
And
it is, and it's daunting. And it's when I first started my development, although I was enjoying that, and I really felt the minute I sat down to try and understand what it was, I really felt like I was home. I really felt like, oh, this is what my life is, and this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And it just felt very, very at home and amazing and comfortable. But then still had to develop that and understand what it was and how it worked and what am I supposed to do with this. And I kind of feel like I gave that over to spirit. I didn't really go into it feeling like, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to work full time and I'm going to create a business. It just fell into that. I believe that what was meant to happen happened.
it's amazing. I don't think a lot of people get to experience that. It's almost like they're constantly pushing up against the grain. And in hindsight, when you look at it, you say, oh, that's what I was meant to do. But at the time, it's this just the void. I call it the void. It's just this overwhelm of confusion and not knowing which direction to go in.
I
Yeah.
agree. It's when we don't know something, even though we might feel inside of us, there's part of it that resonates or there's part of it that's making sense. There's still daunting parts of it that really you're trying to fathom out in your human self, your human mind. And when your human mind gets involved in it, there's all sorts of confusion that goes on. And even when I did know what I was supposed to be doing and I did want to further that development, there's still times, even now, as a medium that's worked for years and years now, there's still times where I will sit and say, I feel like my direction's changing and I don't know why and I don't know where. And it's just having that faith to realize that that's just a natural development of things.
Yeah, and I think because the world is shifting, initially people didn't really know much about mediumship and they'd be actually cautious about it. There's still people today that say it's from the devil and
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
dabble in that. And the truth is, we don't know who we're really communicating with, except I always say that if it's something for your highest good, then it's good. If it's not, then it can't be good.
I totally agree. And I do think that obviously we're becoming more awakened to things now that we know there's something else. And we kind of are coming to a point where we believe that there's a higher power most of the time. Whatever we call that higher power, some people will be more traditionally religious and follow traditional religions. Other people will just be the more spiritual aspect. It's all the same. We all believe in the higher power. And I think that, there are still going to be people that are skeptical about mediums. And there are people that say to me quite openly, I don't believe in that. And there was one example that I will never forget was a lady that I knew that lived down the street from me. And I was just kind of starting out with my mediumship. And she said to me, it's the devil's work and it's devil and counterfeit and all of this. And it frightened me and it stopped me in my tracks for a few months. And I just sat one day and said, "What? How can this be?" Because I knew that I was doing it for the highest of good, and it felt good, and it felt like I was very much working in the light. And I realized that that was more about her own perception of the work, and started to just say, look, you can't doubt this, Karen, you've been doing this all your life. And from there on, I continued it. But you do understand why people are frightened of it. And you do understand that when someone thinks something's supernatural and it's not of this world, they do get frightened. So you understand that, and they're skeptics. And I always say, and so there should be, because until something resonates for you personally, then you just can't take someone's word for it. It has to be a personal experience.
Yeah. And I find that with NDEs too, anybody that's been to the other side has had their own very personal experience of what it is on the other side. And it might not resonate with somebody else, but you know what it means. And I'm assuming that when you're connecting with someone, that certain symbols or images mean something to you that might not mean something to somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's more of a language that you build up with the spirit world as a medium. So when I'm working with them, they might show me things that would make no sense to anyone else, but it's a symbolism just for me because of the way my brain works, or because of my frame of reference over my years of life. And so the spirit world know what to communicate to me to get me to interpret their meaning and get me to interpret what they want to say. But that might mean something completely different to you or the next person. And that is what mediumship is. It's very unique to the medium. And it's not one size fits all. And that's what I feel happens more and more now with the social media and everything that's out there. It's everyone can do this, and just come along and learn this in a class and then you're a medium. And it just doesn't work like that. It is a soul's purpose. It is something that you're born with. Psychic things are slightly different, and I don't want to go off on a tangent about it, but psychic, everyone can develop their psychic ability to a degree. Doesn't mean you'll work as a psychic, but we all have intuition. We all have that intuition that we can kind of develop ourselves. But mediumship isn't. Mediumship's communication with the other side, and it's something that you're born with.
Tell me more about that. So it's not something anybody can do. Is that just because the same way not everyone is a good runner, or not everybody would be good at cooking?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it doesn't mean that you can't try these things, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that you don't have parts of that. I think every one of us has a communication directly with our loved ones, for instance. So if you have your mother who's passed over, you don't have to be a medium to communicate with your mother in the spirit world. You can sort that communication out. You can develop a communication there. Your mum will try to communicate with you, but a medium's work is their work, and they are here to do that work. So I fully believe that when I was born here, my purpose right from day one was to fulfill my mediumship and work in that capacity. So we all have intuition that we can develop, because when we come here from the spirit world, we are psychic. We all have a sixth sense. We all are born here with that mind to mind link, but we forget about it because we develop our five senses through school and as we grow up. So the sixth sense kind of gets shelved, but we all have it. It's that intuition, the hunch that you might have about something, the feeling inside. We all have that, and we can all develop that to a degree, but it doesn't mean that we're going to work with it for other people. Whereas mediums and psychics who develop their psychic ability to that, where they're meant to work with it, it's something that's already inherent within us, I believe. And just like you said, an athlete or a singer or an artist or a musician is a very natural part of them. It's within them to develop that. So I just believe we're all here for our purpose, and whatever that might be, we can choose to develop it or not.
How would somebody know if they are a medium?
And that's a good question too, because sometimes you can, like I said, be aware of presence, spirit presence. You can be aware of your own people, for instance, and it might not mean that you're a medium, like to go and communicate for other people. But as someone who started out not knowing, not realizing that that's what I was supposed to do, for me, it began just feeling the spirit people, being aware of things, just kind of feeling like I was living my life, but I was kind of looking at it from the outside in, if that makes sense. It's like I was on the sidelines of my life watching it unfold, but I still was living it at the same time. And I think any mediums that you speak to would say the same thing. It's the most bizarre feeling. So it's almost like you live in between the two worlds a lot of the time. and you're aware of it. You're so aware of the spirit energy, but you're so aware of the human side of things too. And I think anyone that's kind of feeling like that probably will be able to go on and have a look at developing mediumship. And obviously being aware of spirit, is a big thing. And it doesn't mean that spirit people need to come and talk to you, or that you must see spirit. It doesn't work like that. It's more about being aware of their energy, aware of the presence of the other world. And if you've got that, if there's anybody listening or watching that has that, then I would definitely say to look into that.
Interesting. So it's almost like seeing yourself behind your eyes, the eyes behind your eyes, and looking at from neutral perspective.
Yeah, that's a fabulous way to put it. I always call it my spirit eyes and my spirit ears, because it doesn't feel the same as like when I'm present within Karen the human, like if I'm going about my daily business or speaking to the children or doing whatever, then I'm very present within this world and I'm not thinking about the spirit world or connected in that sense to communication. But when I am by myself or I'm not doing these day-to-day things, I am very aware that I'm connected to spirit all the time. So it's like you're shifting your awareness from each world at different times, depending on what you're doing. And I do hear other mediums at times saying, oh, I'm connected to spirit, 24 hours a day. And I just think, well, that would be a shame, because really we're here to have the human experience. As Karen, I'm here to have this human experience and learn as I go, just the same as everyone else. But when I switch my awareness to spirit, then I'm immediately aware of the other world.
Yeah, I think you're right. If people are just living with spirit through them, then what is the point of them even being here?
Yeah, because we're here for a reason. And even though mediumship might be your purpose, you also have to experience the human element to things, and you are human. Like when you're here, you're human, you're spirit in human form, but you've to live the human life. So, I'm just the same as anyone else. I'll worry about the things other people worry about, or I'll get stressed, or, I'll get frustrated in the car, or just the things that everyone goes through as the human side. But in a way, my blessing is that I know that everything here is very temporary, and it's not worth the worry, or it's not worth carrying burdens to things.
Do you think it helps you to know that you are connected, like on all levels, health-wise, financial-wise, relationship-wise? Does spirit give you like insight, or do they give you real like voices, say, go do this? Like some people say, I have an ex-mother-in-law who used to touch the gambling machines, and she'd say, this one's going to pay out, and it would.
Yeah, and that is a great example of your psychic ability. So that's when she would have been tuned into her own psychic ability, where she just had a hunch or just had a feeling, and that's exactly what psychic ability is in that level. Mediumship, spirit don't tell you what to do. They actually don't. They're never going to come and tell you to make what life decisions to make, because then that's their influence and that would be their decision. So the one thing that as a medium is that you cannot influence people's decisions. So if people come to me for readings, I will never tell someone what to do, and their grandmother or their father or whoever's there won't tell them either, but they will guide them. They will point out direction, they will point out things that they need to know, but it is our own free will that takes us through this life. But from a personal point of view, certainly if I'm facing a problem in life, or an emotional problem or personal things, I definitely would sit with spirit and ask for that guidance and feel that guidance. But that doesn't make it any easier than anyone else at times. I've made many wrong decisions in my life, knowing that, well, that's what I thought was the right thing, and looking back in hindsight, you realise you always knew it wasn't the right thing, but the human side wanted it, so you went forward with it. So we make the same mistakes as everyone else.
I think it's the ego, it's the mind that once it's spelled out in a roadmap, so do this, do that, do that. And if it didn't work out, then we're going to blame somebody else. But like you said, it's free will that they cannot take away from you. They cannot influence that. So when you allow somebody to speak through you, or a spiritual being to speak through you, are you aware of them, or are you also stepping off to the side?
Both, really. I mean, when I connect with someone, I'm firstly very aware of their presence. So I know that the energy is blending. I know that my energy as a medium is reaching their energy. So the energy fields come together, and I'm really aware that that person's there. And they just feel to me like you would feel to me if I was sitting in front of you. So that's the same thing. Then, as they start to communicate, they might communicate through feeling, they might communicate through me hearing them, they might let me see things. It works in all different ways. But when I'm working with them, although I'm still very present within the room and in front of the person that I'm speaking to, I'm in a kind of entranced state, so I do step back slightly to allow that communication to take place, but not in a way that's like trance mediumship. Trance mediumship's a lot deeper than that, and that's when you're a channel for spirit to maybe speak through you and things like that. That's a deeper state of mediumship. But for communication for loved ones and things like that, I step to the side slightly, and I can just let them kind of do that work through me.
Have you ever said no to somebody that's tried to speak through you?
No, I've never had to say no. I've always acknowledged whoever comes, but there have been a few occasions where maybe I'm sitting with my client and it's someone that they don't want. And so I'm aware of that, straight away. I remember one in particular where I knew that the woman I was speaking to didn't want her father from the spirit world to come in, and I could feel him. So I had to let her know that he was there. And I said, look, I know you don't want to speak to your dad. I can feel that. And she immediately said, no, I don't want to talk to him. And I said, so I'm just letting you know that he is there. And I'm going to now say to him that I can't go forward with that communication because it's not what the client wants. And so that's what I done. And I know that he was coming forward to bring some form of healing, to start some form of healing into their relationship. But my client wasn't ready to hear that. So although I don't say no, I will open up to whoever comes. It's not always the way that you can go forward with the communication if the person doesn't want it. You have to always be aware that you're affecting people's lives, and moralistically, you can't do that. You don't want to bring something to someone that they're not ready for or that they don't want.
Yeah. You do healing with both sides. So you can also heal people that are on the other side. And a lot of people think once you've left this world, everything's just rosy and you're healed. That's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, the healing side of it, the healing through mediumship, healing comes to both sides. Because if I've got a father in the spirit world communicating with his daughter, that daughter will obviously take healing from that session, meaning, whether it's they never got a goodbye with their father, or they just had words to say, or they just need to know that he's there, and that in itself brings healing to their grief. But what it also does for the father is it heals him at the same time, because he can then settle knowing that his daughter has heard from him and that she knows that he's there. And, there's all of these, when we pass over, let's say someone passes over suddenly and they didn't get that goodbye, or there was no build up to that, no expectation of that, then that spirit person will want to bring that forward. I'm still here. This is what happened, and that information, that in itself will settle the emotional healing. When we go to the spirit world, even though it's not all rosy, we know where we are back home. And so we don't, as spirit beings, we don't worry about the spirit world. We worry about our loved ones that are here, and we want to bring that healing to them, which in turn then brings healing to us. But there's grief on both sides, even though it's different. As a human grieving, you don't know whether you'll ever see that person again, or you might not believe you'll see them again, or you just think that's the end to their life. Whereas the grief on the other side is the sorrow of watching your loved ones going through it, and the worry about them. So there is grief on both sides, but when we are back home in the spirit world, we know exactly where we are.
Yeah, well, that makes complete sense. What about people that are maybe hearing things, but how would you know if it's psychosis or if it's actually a real voice?
Again, another great question, because when I first started out, someone actually said to me, well, maybe, you have schizophrenia, or maybe there's something wrong, or maybe it's in your mind. And you actually do question it. You sit there for a moment and think, could it be? Is there something wrong with me? And I think that that's part of your own self-discovery as well. And the part of you that when you tune into that question, or when you're asking yourself these things when you're starting out, you know, it's important to kind of explore every avenue. And I've always been what I term myself as a skeptical medium. So I've always been someone that will question things, or even when I was starting out, I would say, well, if this is really me, then I need to get X, Y, and Z. Or if this is really me, I need to know that it's very evidential, you know, because I don't want to be saying to someone, this is what I'm doing, if I don't believe that it is. So you do ask yourself these questions. And for anyone that's going through this or has experienced this, I would say that the feeling of mediumship comes from within you. So even though things come into the mind, like communication can come through your mind, or things can pop into your mind, or you can hear voices, that kind of thing is all in the mind, which mediumship is in through the mind. But when you sit and feel something, that's what will tell you that it's authentic. That's what it will tell. That's when it will tell you that it's coming from a higher source. If it's just thoughts projected in your mind and there's no pattern to them, there's nothing happening, then I would say you have to investigate that as well, you know. But there's people talk about it like it's a thin line, but it's not. If you are a medium and it is mediumship, you will feel it.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's psychosis, I'm just questioning because I was actually just listening to a book by Anthony Williams, The Medical Medium. And he was talking about demons and demon possession. And there's a lady upstairs in my apartment block that has been screaming and banging doors and going crazy. And I'm wondering if she's not possessed, or would that just be psychosis? I mean, it's a random question, but I just thought I'd ask you because I have you in front of me.
I would say that could be psychosis more than possessed. I'm not really, and I could be wrong, and this is just my experience in my opinion, but I'm not someone that believes really about people being possessed in that sense, or attachments. You hear a lot of people talking about attachments, but that's maybe just my experience of it, so I can't say what's right and wrong. But for me personally, I've never experienced it, and I've never experienced dark, evil forces or anything like that. So for me, if someone is going through something like that, I would say that that is a mind condition. And it might be that they feel very rightly so that that's very real, and that maybe someone is communicating to them, and maybe they're going, but for me, from what I know of the spirit world, it's pure, it's in the light, and I'm not saying there's not the opposite effect, because where there's light, there's dark, and we know that. But for me personally, I've never had to experience that. I always say I work in the light, and I'm well protected to do that, and I've never ever questioned that. I have experienced maybe one or two times where I have come across a spirit that I haven't felt good about, like where I felt like there's issues there, or that spirit hasn't evolved too well, or there's stuff that they're carrying still on the spirit side, and that for me was quite an eye-opener, because the energy of it was not good at all. But I still knew that I was protected, and I still knew that I would be okay. I didn't worry about them attaching themselves to me or anything. I think that the spirit world take care of the spirit world, so for me, that doesn't compute for me.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's a different layer of vibration, different frequency. So if you're communicating at a higher frequency, you're not going to encounter that kind of heavy, dense energy. But maybe, it could be a term, demon possession, whatever. It could just be negative energy that you're connecting with. And to me, that would be earth energy, not spirit energy.
Absolutely. And negative, that is a better way to say it. And maybe more people would understand it and maybe not be as frightened of it if we talked about it like that. Because I think that when you, particularly with TV and film and all of this kind of thing, where it's about possession and evil spirits and all the rest of it, really what you're doing is you're implanting that into the mind straight away. But sometimes, like if you look at poltergeist activity, people talk about poltergeists like they're bad, like it's a bad thing, it's an evil thing. But poltergeist just a word, number one, and it actually means mischievous spirit. So it's where there might be things getting moved about, objects moving about and things like that spirit are responsible for. But it doesn't always mean a bad thing. And I know from one of my mentors early on, she told me a story of this house that she got called to where there was lots of poltergeist activity and the family were frightened and they said it was evil and all the rest of it. And when she went to investigate that, she actually found it was the grandfather of the person that had called her who was moving things about to get their attention because the grandson was in danger. So this all came out within the session that they had, and then it all stopped. So sometimes what our mind sees something as isn't always the case, and it's because we already have in our mind the fear of the unknown. If something happens like that, it must mean it's evil, or it must mean somebody's trying to harm us, when quite often it's not that at all.
Yeah, it sounds like the quantum theory, where whatever you think that particle's behavior is going to be, that's what it does.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. You had a near-death experience. Your guardian angels warned you of something. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so I was I got in my car to go to a friend's house one day, which she lives maybe about an hour away from me. And all of the way up in the car, I was just thinking of normal things, thinking about what I had to do next week and work and all the rest of it. But these thoughts kept coming into my mind of, what would I do if I was trapped in a car? What would I do if the car went off the road? And then I would catch myself thinking about it and I would go, oh, why are you thinking about that? That's a really negative thing to think. So I was trying to change the process of what was going through my mind. Anyway, I got to my friend's house. Everything was fine. On the way back, I was about maybe 5 or 6 minutes from home, and my car just went into a full skid. And I could not get control of it whatsoever. And it was because there was loose chippings on the road and it just couldn't get any grip on the road. And my car started to spin round. And I just felt in that moment, that's why I was getting these messages. And in that moment, I felt calm. I took my hands off the steering wheel. I was headed straight for what I could see was a big old tree. And I took my hands off the steering wheel, put my head down, and I just remember feeling like, okay, this is going to be what it's going to be. And the car went into, there was a wall in front of the tree that I hadn't seen because it was low, went through the wall into the tree, it bounced back on itself 2 or 3 times and spun. And I was trapped in the car. And when the car came to a halt, I was able to take my seatbelt off and try to find my phone and try to phone the police and things. And I was in a panic because I could smell burning in the car. But when that panic came, I felt all of a sudden like, it's okay. This is okay. Like I felt like I was in a bubble. That's the only way I could describe it. And I knew that the bird's eye view, let's call it, so from above, I knew that my car had been followed on that path and that I had been protected all the way along. That's the only way I could describe it. And I knew that spirit were looking after me in that moment. And it felt very unreal because I was trapped in this car, couldn't get out. I thought it was going to go into flames. Then someone stopped. It was on a country road as well, which was not a busy road. So I was lucky someone came round, they stopped, and they managed to get me out. And I had not one scratch on me. Nothing. And my car was a complete write-off. My car was crushed, absolutely crushed. And I remember feeling like I knew, like the spirit were with me that all the way through that. I could see their vision of me and on this country lane, and I could feel like they were so connected. Then I scolded myself for not listening because I'm like, Karen, you're a medium and you get these messages for everyone else, and all you did was throw it out your mind like it was you. You should have known better. But that was my experience, and I knew that I was protected. Absolutely.
It's another example of hindsight, where you remember thinking those thoughts, you had them.
Well, you've got to say, why would those thoughts come into your mind? Why would I be driving and suddenly think, what would you do if you were trapped in a car? How would you get out of that car if you were trapped? I wasn't thinking anything about it. So if anyone's listening and they've had that experience, or they have that experience where something comes into their mind totally unexpected and whatever, I would say absolutely listen to it. It is your higher self telling you something.
Absolutely. And that would account for dreams too. Sometimes I wake up and think, why would I dream that? And then okay.
Dreams are a big one because your mind is out of the way when you're sleeping. So when you go to sleep at night, your brain kind of updates. It's like the computer, and it updates everything that it needs to update. Your body, your physical body rests because you need sleep for healing and, for strength and things. But your soul doesn't sleep. Your soul never sleeps. You are with spirit all the time. So when you wake up and it feels like you've had a dream or there's been a message or premonition through a dream, it's actually because your spirit is very aware of it. But we put it down to dreams because we were in bed sleeping when actually we weren't really.
And dreams, like symbols that you see, are again also subject to your own interpretation of what that meant.
Yes, absolutely. And this is the one thing I would say, like people, you can be confused about it. You can think, what does that mean? Or that doesn't make any sense. But what I would say in that moment is just sit with it. Put the symbol in your mind, sit with it, close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, see what the feeling is that comes up with that symbol. Because really the clear sentience, which is the clear feeling of spirit, I feel is the strongest part of mediumship and the strongest part of your psychic ability. So if you're getting premonitions or you're getting symbols or words or whatever it might be, sit with them. Don't try to read them literally. Just sit with them and see the feeling that comes up with them.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Good advice. You do a mentorship for mediumship. Is that right? Genuine evidential mediumship. Is that for people that know they are potentially good mediums, or is that for people who think they might be? Who is it for?
It's for all levels. So if you feel like, oh, you want to know more about the spiritual awakening, or you want to know more about your own higher self, or how do you connect to that, then there's a level for that within the mentorship. And then there's the levels of the more advanced, where somebody might already be working as a medium, or they know that they're a medium and they're just kind of trying to develop. But the reason for the mentorship and for GEM is because genuine evidential mediumship is sometimes a rare thing. There's lots of courses, I feel, that want to give you a certificate and tell you that you're a medium after 6 weeks of a course and whatever. But for me, that doesn't work. For me, it's more about a mentoring service where it's for the individual and it's not for a class of 50 people. It's for that person whose mediumship is unique to them and their own spiritual journey is unique to them. So it was really important for me to be able to work one-to-one with people so that I could bring out the best for them and maybe what they need and share my experience on that. But there are different levels for each person. So if someone is a complete beginner where they're just kind of dipping their toe in the water to see who they are as a spirit being, then there's a level for that. And then there's a level for someone who's maybe just starting to develop their psychic skills and then their mediumship skills. And not everyone's going to be a medium, as in communicating with, the departed. Sometimes you'll do these courses and it's more about developing yourself so that your own life's better, so that you're aware of your higher self, so it makes your life easier. And there's many, many ways to work with mediumship. It's not just about giving people readings. There's many ways that you can work with mediumship. I always say nurses and doctors and musicians and artists and carers and people who work in a shop, they all have their own ability to help people or to service people in some way. So it's really about the inner awakening, and that's what the mentorship is for.
Oh, that sounds amazing. And where can people get hold of you to do that if they were interested?
They can get information at karendocherty.com. So it's all on my website, and there's links to the GEM mentorship on there as well.
Yeah, I'll post those links below. I'm assuming Spirit guides you while you're doing your mentorship as well. Would Spirit be able to speak to their spirits to help them communicate? Kind of like you step back and let Spirit do its work.
Yeah, absolutely. So from a teaching perspective, when I'm working with someone to help development, I am linking in with them, their spirit team, their guides, their helpers, and teaching the person how to do that for themselves. I think that's one of the first things that will come in a mentorship is how do you connect with your higher self? How do you connect with your guides, your helpers, your team, and kind of teaching and enhancing them to be able to do that so that they too can get the guidance. But for me as a teacher, I will link in with that anyway as I'm working with the student and as I'm finding out what their mediumship path is, what their psychic path is, what their spiritual journey is. From a medium's perspective, that's what my work is to link in with people and kind of link in with their soul as well. So all of that kind of gets encompassed in the mentorship.
Yeah. Does automatic writing also form part of mediumship, or is that psychic?
It can be both. The tool of automatic writing, you can sit down and do it for yourself, and it will come from your higher self because we forget how powerful we are. So our higher self knows far more than our human self does. And sometimes I think people, let's say someone does a bit of automatic writing and it's quite profound, and they might think, wow, I wouldn't be able to write that. That must be from the spirit world. But actually, it's probably from their higher self that does have the knowledge and the wisdom. But because we don't like to think that that's how clever we are or that's how much wisdom we have, we like to kind of say it was an outside of us person that done it. So a lot of it can come from your higher self, which is psychic, which is you linking with your higher self. But as a tool, you can absolutely use it with the spirit world too. You can say to someone's mum in the spirit side, okay, come close to me and I'll just write words down and you tell me what I have to write down, and you can then do it that way. So all of these psychic tools that people use can also be used with the spirit world and mediumship.
Interesting. Yeah. How would you know the difference between whether it came from your higher self or from your guides or angels?
Usually you will know just by the wording or the way that it's come forward. So when I sit for trance mediumship, which means going into a deeper state, like a deeper entrancement. When I first started to develop that, I was like, how do I know this isn't just me? Like again, the skeptical medium. I've done my mediumship for years and I knew that that's where my work was going, but I still was questioning, right, Karen, you have to get yourself out of the way. How do you know it's not coming from you? But the way that spirit work through me when I'm doing that is completely different to me. It's like their breathing's different, the rhythm of their breath is different, the words are different, words that I wouldn't use. So that would be the same with automatic writing. The words that were written down maybe wouldn't be like remotely like your own, even from your higher self, there's going to be a similarity to you. So I think that you would get to know just by practicing that and then and also sit with it, and once you get to know your team, like I think a big part of this is getting to know your spirit team so that you know who they are and how do you connect with them, because once you get to build that relationship with them, you will know automatically if it's them or if it's your higher self.
Yeah, that makes sense. I suppose it would have like a different voice, tone, speed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to listen to a guy that channeled and I was so excited because it was something new I discovered. But every time I heard the channeled voice, he was so boring and I thought it would be this exciting information, but I'd fall asleep.
Not always, not always. And I think that's the thing. I think I've seen a lot in my earlier years of people saying they were channeling and you knew that it wasn't because you didn't feel the presence of spirit. You knew it was coming from their own mind or their own imagination. And it put me off because that's when I used to say, I'm not doing that. If I'm going to do that, then I know I need to know that I'm doing it. I don't want to say I'm doing it and then it's actually all me. But once it started to happen for me, I've got lots of recordings of it, and when I listen to it, sometimes I'm like, oh, like that's just definitely not me. Like, and I actually gave my son them to listen to. He works with soul work as well and energy work. And I said, okay, I've not showed anyone, but I want you to listen to this. I only sit with one other person and it's between her and I when we do it. But I said, I want you to listen to this and I just want you to see, what you think. And he listened to it and he said, Mum, that's just not you. You do know that that's not you. And I was like, yeah, I know, but I just wanted another outside opinion because I was still skeptical. So it can take time to trust how it works. But really, when you're watching someone in trance, it's more about the presence. It's whether you feel the presence of spirit.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're open to it, would you be willing to give us a message or channel a message for us?
Do you mean like a general message for everyone?
Yeah, for the
I mean,
viewers.
yeah, I mean, I feel that the biggest thing that I pick up on when I'm talking about this and bringing that knowledge forward is really about the spiritual awakening, and not a spiritual awakening in the way that you hear everybody talk about it, like, oh, what's going to happen to the end of the world, or is it the world changing? I know that we talk about that, but I feel, and when I've sat with spirit, this is what I always receive, is that there is change in the world. There is change in the spiritual journey for people now, and there is a bigger awakening happening. So for anyone that's listening, I would say to start trusting your intuition on that, start trusting the movement on that, because if you resist that, if you're trying to resist that, then that's not going to work. I feel like going with the flow on things is more important. And for anyone that's listening to this, it doesn't mean you need to run away and develop meditation or develop your relationship with spirit. It just means that you need to be aware that everything in this world is very temporary, in a way that it should help provide comfort, that if something's going on in your life and it's not the best place, or you're worried about something, then it will pass, and it will go forward. And I honestly feel that as humanity as a whole, I feel are moving forward at a different pace now.
I got this image of a train going through like a dark tunnel with tracks, and the train's shaking, and it's almost like it's getting rid of all the conceived ideas we have about who we are and how things work, to clear us so that we can go into this new daylight.
I agree. I agree. And I just think people ask me a lot just now about the way the world is, and in certain countries, what's going on, and, the changes that are being made, and sometimes not for the better, like previously, I mean, and everyone's got different opinions. But the one thing that I would stick to is that we are here for a short time. And the differences that are being made sometimes have to be made. And sometimes that will cause a little bit of pain and discomfort, and people don't like it. But there always has to be that for change to come, for the better, for the highest good. So I think we all, as individuals, go through our trials and tribulations, and I think everyone's life is very different at times. But if we can remember that we are higher spirits, that we are spirit in human form, and everything is temporary, and there's a reason for everything, I think it gets us through it a little bit better.
Absolutely. Well, I agree with you on the spiritual awakening side. I mean, yes, there's a lot of chaos going on, but the whole point is that people are starting to see through the chaos and collapse that old belief structure, and start realizing who we truly are, because we're not just these little small human beings here. We are creators. We're able to create worlds. I was actually speaking to somebody, and I said, do you believe in numerology and astrology and all those things? They're guidance posts, but who's to say you don't affect the planets yourself? It would work both ways.
Absolutely. And I think that we have to realize that we have an ability within us that we underestimate, a power within us that we underestimate. And whilst I do believe in taking care of you and your world, meaning you and your family, people in your world, taking care of you, bringing yourself to a place of peace is really important. So when you're going through things in life, understand that you are important. Because I think the way that we are conditioned is to say, take care of other people, always about other people. But sometimes then we let ourselves fall, we forget what we need and what is going to nourish us. But how can we help others if we don't nourish ourselves? So we can't do that. So taking care of you first and foremost is important. And the good way to do that is to actually understand who you are and what you stand for and what resonates within you. Because once you truly are focused on that, then you will help other people anyway. You will shine light somewhere.
And I think that's the hardest thing, because so many people have been taught that they're not allowed to do that. It's been conditioned into us for centuries, and people are starting to question that narrative, which is awesome.
It is. And I always say, I mean, I'm in Scotland and have lived here my whole life. And I think there's a way in Scotland that we are raised, don't step out of line, don't think you're better than you are, don't get too big for your boots, all of this, and don't think you're something special, you're the same as everyone else. And in theory, these are all good ways to keep someone humble. But actually, like for instance, when I started doing my mediumship, I felt like I can't tell people that because they'll think, who does she think she is? You know, that she's got this ability and it's different from other people. And so it really hindered me actually within myself because I was like, I don't want to say that or I don't want to do that. And same thing happens if you're a singer or you're an artist or whatever. You know, you don't want to kind of blow your own trumpet. You don't want to stand out there and say, I can do this and be confident, because if you're too confident, then it's seen as something else. It's seen as that person's arrogant or their ego's too big. Whereas I think now, and again, it's a hindsight thing, it's a generational thing as well. I would say to my children, you can be anything you want to be. You could do anything you want to do in this world. You have the power to do it. You've got to have the focus and the drive to do it. But keeping them humble at the same time. So I think that there's ways that we are all conditioned, no matter where we're from or what our upbringing is, that has been detrimental to our own spiritual awakening. And it's nobody's fault. It's just the way it was. But going through that and changing that to say, well, it's okay to think about me first sometimes. It's okay for me to take care of me first so that I can then take care of other people. And I think it's just changing the mindset.
Yeah, and I think the conditioning is a hard thing to get by, especially if you still want to be accepted by your friends and your peer group, your family. And the truth is, when they see that you're happy and that you're not causing harm, that's when you see that they start to shift a little bit things. But when you're going up against the entire society, that can be really tough.
It really is. And I think, again, that's the beauty of getting to know yourself in a strong way, because once you get to know yourself in a strong way, nobody's going to shake that. And it's not like if somebody said to me tomorrow, you know, I don't think you're a medium, you know, I think that you're delusional, or I just think that, you know, you think you're a medium, I would say that's cool. That's fine. That wouldn't shake me. It wouldn't worry me in any way. I know what I do. I know where my connection is. At one time, at the start of my journey, I would have been like, oh, what if I'm not? You know, I would have let that get into me because my psyche at that time was, oh, maybe I can't do this, or maybe I shouldn't do this, or maybe they wouldn't agree with it, or maybe that. But when you get to know who you truly are and find your power, which is your higher self, then you come to a point of, I know this is right for me, and that's okay if people don't. And it just changes the whole thing.
Absolutely. I think that's the ultimate goal, is that you're self-led and not other people-led.
Exactly.
Yeah. Before we go, do you have a message for the people out there, specifically from the loved ones that are on the other side? Yeah.
The message is always going to be, the biggest message is always from Spirit going to be that we are here. Like there's no death, that life is eternal, that they are still in our everyday lives. And really, they are wanting to communicate with us. They want to let us know that they're okay. So if you do have loved ones that you miss and that have crossed over, then keep talking to them, keep making them a valuable part of your life, because they want that. It's not just about, again, I think it's a human thing where we think, what do we need? Like my mum's over in the spirit world and I wish she was here because I need her. I need to know that she can hear me. But what about what that mother's need is? That mother's need is to know that her child is okay, but that mother's need is also to know that she's being remembered and that she's being involved and that people still know that she's alive. So there's a need on both sides. So I would say that the spirit world's need is to be kept in the loop, you know, be kept as part of our current life so that they know that we know they're still alive.
I love that. And I know the East, they do that. And also in Africa, you know, it's taking bringing blessings to the elders and the ancestors and commemorating them. And they do, like you say, they do listen and they do appreciate it.
Yeah. And it's wonderful. You know, when I do communication for someone, you know, I was earlier today doing a wonderful communication for a lady, and it was her husband and her son and her daughter were also on the spirit side. And what it does for someone is really amazing. But more than that, the husband on the spirit side was so emotional about it because he needed her to know that he was here, and the evidence that he brought her proved that to her. So her life's going to be impacted and changed by that, and so is his on the other side, because he knows that that will settle things down. So for me, I'm blessed to be part of it, and I'm never more grateful. I say my gratitude prayers every day to spirit. And I think if we all do gratitude prayers for whatever we've got going on in our life, wherever we are, it changes things too.
Absolutely. And I think just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means you can't see it yet.
Exactly. I always remember being at school and being in science and using the Bunsen burner for the gas and the gas going off. And I remember sitting in my science class thinking, well, just because the flame's not there to show that the gas is there doesn't mean the gas is not there. And I always remember that. And I was only about 11 years old. And for me, it's the same thing, you know. If the flame here goes out, the visibility might go away, but it doesn't mean the source is not there.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, thank you so much. That was enlightening. And I will post all your links below. I'll certainly hope that a lot of people will benefit from it. But yeah, that was great. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you, Natasha. And thanks for inviting me on.